Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Deputy Secretary, for being here today. Perhaps you've heard the phrase that if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. One of the ways that you could assess that is by looking at an org chart. And so, in fact, Secretary Rubio said that if I show you an org chart of what the State Department used to look like and what it looks like today, it's unrecognizable. So I decided to look at the org chart. So we got the org chart here from 2000. And you can just, obviously I'm not expecting you to be able to read it and be kind of an eye chart, but it's really just kind of a visual representation of what the different offices, agencies, and so forth were looking like. And then let's show the one from the org chart for after the Biden administration. And Tyler, just hold both up there. Right? So if you look at it, I mean, just visually, you can see that it's just a lot more complicated after the Biden administration. In fact, I count there's 16 additional bureaus and offices that were added over the last 2 decades. And, to me, this is an indication that there could be bureaucratic bloat in your organization, similar to what maybe you just described here. And not that organizations shouldn't change. Organizations should change, and they should adapt to the new circumstances. In fact, I think, Deputy Secretary, your position wasn't even around a few years ago. But more does not necessarily translate to better. So, Deputy Secretary Ricketts, can you explain how the differences in the 2 different org charts, here, Tyler, keep the other one up, please, thank you. Can you explain how the 2 different, the illustration of these 2 different org charts kind of demonstrates the challenge the State Department has long faced in terms of efficiency and agility, and how your proposed reorganization is going to address this?
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that question. As I noted, we asked the people sort of at the top of each of those, there are 6 undersecretaries, about their bureaus that report down to them, and ask them what works, what doesn't work, where can we consolidate functions. And as anyone, you've been a governor, you've run a large organization. These things just kind of come up over time. You have some issue of the day that needs to be addressed, and it's a real problem. And you create an office to address it, right? And they probably did a good job and addressed it, and then 5 years later, maybe the problem isn't as salient or as urgent, but the bureau remains. And what we've looked at here is, to the extent that some of those issues still need some day-to-day management, maybe they don't need to have their own bureau. Maybe they can be combined with another bureau that does similar or overlapping functions. And we found that in a number of different places. Like, we had 3 offices that dealt with sanctions, and we said, okay, well, sanctions are important, but do we need 3 offices? Can it be done in 1 office? The same thing with nuclear proliferation. There were, the State Department had absorbed an agency years ago, but that had remained its own bureau. And so we asked folks, how can we continue to execute on these important missions, but do it in the most efficient and effective way possible, so that you got clearer lines of accountability and a better use of resources?
Great. Well, thank you very much. You mentioned I was governor. I was governor of Nebraska. And one of the things we focused on as well was government efficiency. In fact, we actually combined different agencies together, similar to what you're doing with your different offices here. One of the other things we did is we trained 30,000 people of our state teammates in Lean Six Sigma, which is a process improvement methodology we've discussed. It's used in the private sector to eliminate waste, redundant steps, reduce costs, and improve service. Because of that investment, we were able to save our state teammates 900,000 hours of their time by finding simpler steps, so we reduced the amount of time it took them to do things, and save taxpayers $115 million. The private sector has competition to drive that. Government obviously does not. That's why it's so important that we have leaders who take the steps to try and drive these things. Deputy Secretary, when we spoke before your nomination hearing, I appreciate that you're focused on personnel management, and I agree with, I think, what you said is personnel is policy, and process is also performance. Now the State Department's organization chart better reflects the administration's priorities. What are some specific plans to go beyond just the structure to focus on day-to-day process and system to impact service, to improve it, and get rid of waste and inefficiency?
Oh, thank you for that question, Senator. I think that is a kind of a daily exercise when you're in the business of management, is asking how things work, how can we make them work better. We're going to take a hot minute here to let the new organization sort of settle in, and over the next 3 weeks or so, bureaus that are being combined are going to come together under new leadership, and I think it's a daily iterative process. Say, what are we doing? How can we do it better? Why does something, and you see it come up every day when you've got questions about why did this take too long, or why did we get this constituent complaint about what's happening here. It's usually a sign that something is not working as well as it should, and that's an opportunity to drill down and say, how did this happen? How can we prevent it? Were there too many steps involved? Or maybe is there a step that's missing that should be there? And I think it's just a constant evaluation about what is the ultimate goal we're trying to do in each of these areas, whether it's an oboe building, safe, secure buildings at a price to the taxpayer that we can justify, or whether it's delivering on passports to Americans. We're doing that in under 2 weeks now. The standard is like 4 to 6 weeks, so I think we're doing a good job there. But there's always issues that come up, that people come up with constituents who have visa issues, or how are we dealing with our trading partners. That's a big thing that the president has really led the way on, and where the State Department is going to be right behind him, making sure that we're able to deliver for American businesses and American workers, and also onshore some of these critical national security functions and supply chains as well.
Right. Well, I thank you very much, Deputy Secretary. I want to point out that I asked one of your predecessors what her goal was to process a passport application. She couldn't tell me. She didn't have a goal. So the fact that you actually have standards is a good start in being able to actually deliver for the American people. I'd recommend that the things you're talking about, you formalize that process through Lean Six Sigma or another process improvement methodology, so that you actually formalize and you train people on how to do it. So it's not just one-offs the way it could devolve to, like, hey, we have a problem, but that you actually make it a formal process as part of the culture that people are doing this each and every day. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me go over.